Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana, Robyn, and Porshèa embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. We're super excited to be discussing Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and today we're talking chapters 3 through 5.
Previously on Wizard Team, we met Bree Matthews as she learned that her mother died. Um, at the moment, she was just so traumatized. Like she kind of has like a static interference moment. Things are occurring over a cloud of just grief. So while she sees some suspicious things, and which is our actual earliest introduction to magic in the story, we can't really get an clear understanding of it because Bree does not have the ability to think clearly about it. But where we pick up next with her is 3 months later, where she's at the early college program at UNC Chapel Hill, her mother's alma mater, and the source of the antagonism between her mother and her before her mother died. She's there. She and her bestie Alice are from this rural part of North Carolina, and the only person they know there is this homegirl named Christine. And it was like, come on, everyone does this. Everyone goes to this party.
I think it's Charlotte.
Charlotte. I don't know why I'm thinking CH.
Same thing.
Christine, Charlotte, same. Charlotte's like, hey, let's go to the Quarry party. Everyone does this the first year. It's a rite of passage for everyone. You're totally not getting in trouble. And what happens? But we see kids jumping off of cliffs, and Bree, who's going through this moment of kind of like dissonance in herself, where she's determining whether she's her before Bree or her after Bree. Her after Bree component really wants her to take on the danger she sees in front of her, even though common sense will tell her to chill out. Luckily for her, she does have a common sense on Alice, and strangely, and this complete stranger who tells her that she better not think about it when Alice walks away. Alice is not happy being there. She doesn't know why Bree dragged her out to this. And the random boy that tells her that she shouldn't jump in then follows up this common sense with no sense at all, grabbing her. So do people make sense right now? No. And the person who most makes no sense in this moment is Bree to herself. She doesn't even know what she's going through, what she wants to do with herself. As she's going through this unknowing, all she knows is that Cell is dangerous and strange. And then as she's following people to the source of
dangerous, strange, and kind of hot. Continue.
Whatever.
That's important.
We're gonna have so many different opinions on all of these characters. We're gonna have the same opinions and different ones. It's gonna be really funny to find out which ones are which.
She says he's too beautiful to exist.
The feralness entertaining. We'll get there.
She did describe him as beautiful.
Sure.
I'm just saying it comes in. It is important for the story. Continue.
Anyways, as she's people have peeled away, Alice and Charlotte are no longer in Vantage, so they say they're going to go off with Charlotte's strange talking about strange boys. I don't know who Charlotte, what she's prescribed to. I don't know what she finds in this boy, but he's definitely uncouth. And for whatever reason, she and Alice have walked off with him to see if him do a random activity, basically beer chug or whatever. And the crowd has gotten really quiet. So Bree is left with no other choice, of course, but to follow the strange, beautiful boy. And as she follows him, she realizes that there's a fight that's broken out between 4 football players. But strangely, what she really is starting to see is something moving as a glimmer And the strange boy and this random girl called Tor, that he calls Tor, show up and start battling not with the boys, but with this mysterious glimmering entity that she learns is called an Easel. Reveals some stuff about Merlin, a King's Mage, and that's all tied to Strange Boy Selwyn. And then also Sel has the ability to control people's minds. So she's freaking out about the fact that he's able to tell people to move away from this insult incident. And it's including her. She's also lured into walking away. She's only able to break out of it because she's in this like dissonant headspace with herself and is falls into a tree basically. Um, and then while she's trying to come to grips with all this, while she's crushing by a tree, she's also just like, "What is this magic? Is this a thing?" And the last thing we really hear in the conversation between Sel Tor and the Easel before they kill it is that there's something about gates, and particularly on campus as well. So Bree knows that whatever she's seeing is not limited to just this incident, and that is like partially related not only to Sel and Tor, but there's something happening on campus as well. And that's where we leave off.
Okay. So that starts us into chapter 3. Finally, Bree leaves the woods and she sees Charlotte and Alice standing by a sheriff's patrol car because she has been gone, like, for some time between the fight breaking out and then trying to find Alice and then getting distracted by that entire recap that Porshèa just gave us with the E-Cell and the magic and the beautiful boy. Beautiful, strange, dangerous boy. And so so most of the party has broken up, most of the kids have left, and when she finally comes out, it's just Charlotte and Alice standing next to a patrol car. Charlotte's boyfriend is nowhere to be found, which, break up with the boy, but you know, we'll see. But I'm just saying, if you're not gonna rock with me while I'm standing by a patrol car, then you're not gonna rock with me. Right. You just left me to deal. Alice is visibly upset, and as Bree goes to like comfort her, she does not want any comfort from Bree. She doesn't even want Bree to touch her.
It's interesting. Like, I just want to point out, like, I get it on that side, but also, like, Bree's been missing in the woods for a minute. So there's also, like, a lack of, like, oh, shit, are you good? Type,
right, because they were separated.
It's like, right.
Yeah.
And Bree did, like, obviously, granted, Bree was definitely in there, like, longer than she should have been, but she did start out looking for Alice. Like, she was trying to get out, and so there's no, like, moment of them, on both sides, being like, oh, thank God, you're okay, type situation. And, like, I get it. There's a cop here. You weren't supposed to be here in the first place. You know, like, it's you're upset about that, but then it's also, like, your friend has definitely not emerged from this forest in however much time.
At the same time, what I mentioned last episode, I really need to check in on Bree's phone, because how many missing texts and phone calls are on her phone right now?
Right.
Yeah. And I think this is like the start of, we kind of talked about this in the last episode about her relationship with Alice and kind of the changes that they're going through. Like, they started this journey as two very smart, othered kids in a small town who wanted to get out. Alice had the support of her parents. Bree didn't really. But when they were applying to go to early college and all of this stuff, they have all these plans of how they're going to do it together. Bree goes through like a really big shift. And like we said, like a lot of these early chapters is just her like dealing with her grief. Like she has labeled herself before Bree and after Bree, and that incident is her mother's death, which is only 3 months ago. Like, it's not a long time,
especially in terms of like as far as grief processing
and not only processing
it's like
grief,
nothing.
but like your mother, like your like
Mm-hmm.
Not that to say that there are there are different levels of grief, and there are also different levels of processing that you have to go through depending on who you lose. And like, they could be someone very close to you. Like, I remember the difference in losing both of my grandmothers, where one was going through dementia and it had been a long process, and I was very sad. So my grandmother, I'm very close to her, but I also felt kind of relieved that she wasn't suffering anymore. You know what I mean? It sounds weird, but like, my mom isn't being a caretaker in the same way that she was before. It was very, very hard to watch that like slow process. And then my other grandmother, the grandmother I share with Bayana, it felt like boom overnight and she was gone. And so those, even though they were both my grandmothers, like close to them in different, we had different relationships, but still they're, that same kind of level of closeness. The grieving was completely different. Like, and it's still here with me, and it shows up in weird ways. I pass Petco Park. I went to the library and cried in the bathroom because I missed my grandma, and she's been gone for some years. But when the new San Diego library opened, I went with my grandmother, and something about going in that building unlocked something, and you know what I mean? So like, there are different levels and there's different like capacities, but and like I said, like, years later, I still have these moments where it's not every day I'm not like, grieving my grandmother, but like, there will be these moments in which it like hits you a little bit harder. Your mother, your parents, the people that you see every day who are taking care of you, who the last moment you were fighting with about something that really mattered to you, is going to be a huge change, shock, like, process. And it's only been 3 months. And there was no warning.
And she's also now there's no warning. And also now she's in this place that was the source of the fight with her mom, is like where her mom, like, went to school. So there's all these other things coming up too. It has to be really surreal and weird. And we talked about a bit last episode about also like Bree feeling all of this and being angry, but not having anywhere to put it.
Right.
And so it kind of also contributes to her kind of being all over the place a little bit, which makes a lot of sense.
But I also don't want to discount that, like, just for Alice, that like...
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't necessarily think that is something that, like, Alice... I'm not expecting her to get that all right away, especially because, as we see, especially in the stretch of chapters we're discussing this episode, like, Bree is also kind of not articulating that and is holding a lot of it in, and not like expressing that to Alice. And so there is, to an extent, only so much that Alice can do because there's only so much that she can see. I feel less like this now because we're able to, like, this is like my third time reading it, and we're going a little deeper into it versus like my initial reaction reading the first time where I was just like, girl, like, be there for your friend. Now it's like, no, I do understand. It's like, it's hard because you don't get all, like, Alice is not getting the download of everything that's going on in Bree's brain like we are.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what she's able to go off of are actions and things that in her head is like, this isn't Bree. This isn't something that she would regularly do. And like, why is she putting me in this position? I think some of those things could be answered by being like, okay, clearly my best friend has gone through a huge trauma, life-changing event, and that means things are not going to be how they were before.
But people project. Like, people project. Like, if whatever Alice does when she goes through grief is probably what she's like expecting from Bree.
But here's the thing, too.
I mean?
Alice is 16. She's probably never had a loss like this. Like, and that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is that, like, I don't think Bree's never had a loss like this, and you don't. They're at this moment where you're like, I still remember like those years, especially when I was going to college, where your parents are like your guideposts, your like your safety, but also like your constant, right? Like, everything is changing around you. You're in a new city. You're on your own for the first time. They're young. They think that they can handle it, but we talked about last episode, like, even when you're the right age to go to college, like it's more than you. I mean, you can assume, and some people transition better than others, but it's still a lot. It's a big transition, and so we hear later in this chapter, Alice's parents they've already discussed, like, Alice is going to go home every weekend. So she can't really fathom what's going on, and Bree is not articulating and sharing. So it's really just like it's like the blind leading the blind kind of in this whole situation, and it's really sad, but I love the way that Tracy writes this, because it's like
they're all each other has at the same time.
Like you, Bayana, I'm like, girl, have some sympathy, have a little bit of empathy, like, you know what I mean? Like, just stretch yourself a little bit to figure out, like, that she's obviously going through it. But also, thinking about myself at 16, like, how much empathy can you have when you can't even fathom what going through it means? Imagine. Yeah, you can't you can't put yourself in those shoes.
They don't even have their driver's license yet.
Yeah. Right. There's, like, and also even, like, it's just, like, you, especially, and I think also there's also this thing of, like, they're both going through a big change, like a change of, environment. They're off on their own for the first time. And, like, there's also that sense of, like, we were supposed to go into this together and have each other's backs and do this thing. And you decided to come and still do this thing. And so, it's like the trying to, like, or not being able to fully adjust in your brain, like, how this thing is going to be different. Like, I don't think Alice coming into this had a moment, and, like, it's something I have to do, you know what I mean? You have to adjust your expectations going into something. It might not be what you initially thought it was going to be, but you have to, and some people need that, like, prep time before, but she didn't take that time to be like, okay, Bree is in a different headspace here. She's still, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know what things were like before they got to college, because we skipped that 3 months. So it's not completely, like, we don't know how their dynamic has shifted in that time.
It seems like they played it a bit safer. But I think that
Alice didn't really. You said what?
It seems like they played it a bit safer because of how even Bree talks about some of the stuff when we get through in the couple of chapters of, like, like, being her and Alice being, like, sticking together, like, within their earlier chapters from the last episode, but then also how few Black kids there are, and, like, the how they socialize, like, just, like, kind of small, like, they don't, like,
well, yeah, but small. I mean, like, even in that, I'm saying, like, after her mom dies, their relationship had to shift in some ways. Like, yeah, they weren't going out and doing things, you know what I mean? But it, like, I don't think, there wouldn't be a precedent for, like, this kind of situation, but I think
Alice has noticed in their interactions that things have shifted, but
things have shifted, but it's not like she hasn't gone into this situation of we're going to college and things aren't going to be the same as we expected before her mom died, I guess, she didn't have that, like, thought. So she's going into it like, yeah, we're doing this thing, it's gonna be fun, we're best friends, we're gonna do the things that we usually do, and Bree is just not in that same headspace anymore.
And I want to, like, I don't think we're here yet, because no, it's in a different chapter. So anyway, so Alice is really upset. She doesn't want to talk to Bree. The sheriff lets Charlotte go, but takes Alice and Bree back to campus in the squad car. Partially, this is because I assume they're early college students, and so they are 16, right? They're minors, and Charlotte is no longer a minor. She's 18 now.
I believe.
Or she might still be set. She was in early college, but she's a year or 2 years ahead of them. A year?
Now I can't remember. She said it.
Yeah.
Hold up.
It's like,
because I'm like, if she's 2 years older, I'm like, it's because she's a minor. If she's only 1 year older,
she's still a minor.
There were still, yeah.
It's in chapter 1.
Yeah.
A girl we knew from Bentonville High, 2 years after EC. So she's 2 years older than them, at least.
Okay, yeah.
Because she's now an undergraduate at Carolina this year. So at least 18.
She's
not a minor.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense. But this sheriff also hits every single red flag. Playing Sweet Home Alabama is a hate crime when you have a black teenager and an Asian teenager in your backseat. I just want, like, we're having this moment on social media where we're all figuring out, like, cultural differences and different cultural understandings. So if y'all are not a marginalized identity, if you ever decide that you're going to drive or give someone a ride in the South, not even in the South, anywhere in America, if you are a white person, listen to me here, Wizard Team listeners, if you are a white person giving a ride to people of color, unless you know them with your whole soul, do not play Sweet Home Alabama.
Don't play Leonard Skinner.
You might as well be playing the soundtrack to Get Out. You might as well be playing Birth of a Nation. Like, we are already, like, the shoulders are up, okay? The shoulders
Just don't play Leonard Skinner. Be careful with any country music that is not Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, or Lil Nas X.
George Strait, though.
Be very, very careful.
We can do George Strait. Anyway, we'll go. We're getting
JC Chicks.
The chicks.
I mean, this is a very specific list.
The chicks.
There's this very specific list of folk.
And you better be confident you better be confident that artist is on that list. Okay?
If it ain't Miss Dolly, I don't know what to say for
don't
you.
Do
okay?
it. Just
I don't know what to do. I would play it safe.
Let's sit in silence and talk.
100.
Let's
talk 100.
Let's do some small talk and get to know each other and sit in silence. Like, let's just So he playing Sweet Home Alabama. I'm calling the FBI Civil Rights Unit. And then he literally hits every single dog whistle play. Like,
red
he gives
flag.
you the he gives you.
I'm gonna talk about the other red flag in the car though, because Tracy took the moment to put it in there, so I have to with the red flag. He has what is that crap called? The chew and spit.
Oh yeah.
That stuff. He got chewing tobacco in a car, and it's a mint flavor or whatever. And if you see someone rolling around with chew, nah. Yeah. Like, some of them be alright, but you don't play with that. That's messy.
If you're not playing baseball.
Yeah, he's got dip. I think it's called dip. That's what I've always called it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a while since, again, that's how far past I've been dealing with anyone who has it, because I can't.
It's winter flavored Skull. Skull is the name brand, but I've always called it like.
Yeah, it's a brand, but I forget what it's called.
It's a brand, but yeah, dip or whatever.
Yeah,
we know. So this man goes on to hit. It is like actually impressive, the amount of dog whistles he hits. He gives you the model minority. He gives you the affirmative action. He gives you girlfriend. He says, "Oh,
girlfriend is crazy.
How did you guys get into?" He asked Alice how she got into EC, and then said something like, "I bet you it was your grades because Alice is Taiwanese American, and so the Asians, they be smart."
But also couches in my son tried to get in, and it's hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then says, wait.
He's like, how did you get in, or how
did you swing it?
He makes an allusion to
how did you swing it?
He's like, you get a needs-based scholarship, just a lot.
And then he says, my kid applied but didn't get in, tough school to crack, pricey too. That's what he's saying. So he's like, how did you swing it? As in, y'all don't have no money. And so then Alice, I believe, says scholarship, and he says, what about you, girlfriend, to Bree? And Bree says. And then, no, he says, I'm guessing needs-based scholarship. And she's like, merit. I got a merit scholarship, because I'm smart. I'm very smart. And he chuckles and says, sure. So he literally is like, Alice says, I got in on a scholarship. He's like, you probably got great grades, little Miss Asian lady. And then looks at Bree and says, you got in because of affirmative action. Which is crazy, but also is like the tension in the backseat because Allison and Bree are in the backseat.
Sorry, that was the Wi-Fi.
They're tense with each other, and now they're tense with oh boy, because this is a very dangerous situation. I think Bree even like alludes to like what's going on in the world. So this is, I believe, still kind of a urban fantasy, like we say.
I mean,
this comes out like in what
the book came out in 2020.
Yeah,
it's not like the date the date isn't clear, but that's on purpose because, like, you know,
right, you don't want to.
But it's set in this decade,
yeah,
right, or like in the last 5 years or so, and like there's a paragraph that kind of just acknowledges that, like, you know, cops are not safe for Black people, and so this is a very tense moment, even though like we kind of get off, this is a quote, like we get off light with some microaggressions and a couple dog whistles, but like could very easily turn a different way, and Bree has to be aware of that, and like you can tell that that's in her head as she's responding to these things, right? She's not like flashing on dude. He's like, oh, you got this needs-based scholarship, and she's like, merit, and just kind of, you know, leaves it at that, because what else is she supposed, you know, this is not a safe situation for her,
which I think is also goes to show, like, I mean, this might as well be called Wizard Team We Love Bree Matthews. We stand Bree Matthews, but like we've just seen a prologue and 2 chapters of Bree in her brain flashing on everybody, and then like translating that, and she, you know, she's not doing it to, like, she's not fooling everyone, right? Alice has picked up something is wrong, her dad has picked up things are wrong, like the people close to her know that, like, this is, they may not understand that she's in her brain saying like before Bree and after Bree, but they notice that line as well. But people who don't know her, she's doing a pretty decent job of not losing it and staying, like, she has her walls up and staying kind of like, but in her, and so it's really interesting that, like, you can kind of see her annoyance in her internal monologue about this, but like she has still been able to like maintain composure and self-control and be aware. Like two seconds ago she was thinking about jumping off a cliff. Like, if you want to be reckless, being in the cop car, like being in the back of a Southern police officer's cop car while he's playing Leonard Skinner is a great place to try it. So I just think that, like, it just goes to show, like, Bree's actual capacity. So she is, and I also think it further puts strain on her and Alice's relationship, because Alice is also in the backseat taking all this in, but in Alice's brain, they wouldn't be here if Bree hadn't have, if it wasn't for Bree. So, like, all of these things, like, she didn't want to be at the party in the first place.
But I do think there is, both in this moment and in the Dean moment, where, like, they do have a, like you can tell they do have each other's back. Alice is pissed at Bree, but it's not like she's just gonna, you know what I mean? Like, she's peeping and is ready to do something if it becomes necessary.
And, like, I think this kind of goes into what we, in our bonus episode with Lily Mead, when we talked about, like, just, like, siblings and stuff. And, like, Alice and Bree are not siblings, but they are as close to siblings as each of them have, right? And so that's, it's a matter of being best friends, but it also goes a little bit deeper than that, especially being at Carolina in this early college program. Like, I think, and we'll see this a little bit more, I think that Alice is like, you switched up the agreement, you're not living up to your side of the agreement, but, like, that doesn't mean that like, I'm not going to have your back, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be mad about it the whole time, but that, you know, it is still us against everyone else, or, you know, only I can be mad at you kind of thing. So the Cell and Tor come out of the woods and stop the cop.
Well, I think the cop stops.
The cop does not seem, or the cop stops because he sees Cell and
coming
Tor
out of the woods, and he's like,
yeah,
you know, what's going on, and then he recognizes them and is like, oh, oops.
He recognizes Selentor, and then they have this interaction in which Bree is like, oh shoot, the cop knows about magic, knows who Selentor are. Sel at one point is like, carry on, and so it's kind of like giving the cop direction. And so I think Bree kind of phrases it like, there's this sheriff and 2 teenage kids, and the cop is like feeding to the kids and like salutes Tor on the way and stuff like that. And she's looking at Alice like, do you see this? I'm trying to tell you, like, this is directly tied to why I was in the woods so long, type of thing. But Alice is not looking at her. Alice is like, I don't see nothing. I'm not saying nothing. Hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil. Just get me back to the campus. And when the sheriff drops him off at the early college dorm, we kind of see the differences in just where they're at mentally and like emotionally right now. Like Alice, whose parents are coming to take her, like, who has agreed with her parents she's going to go home every weekend, has still decorated her dorm like she's living there full time. And Bree, who has no such agreement with her dad, has not. She says that like she brought the bare minimum because everything at home just reminds her of sadness and grief. Alice goes to bed without acknowledging her, and Bree sits a little bit longer and finally fully like connects the dots between the things that she saw at her mom's or at the hospital with her mother to the things she saw tonight, and like fully acknowledges and accepts.
Well, she doesn't.
That there is now magic in this
quite
world.
Connected to the hospital yet.
Oh, I thought that was...
No, that's at the end of that's chapter 5, I think. Yeah,
okay.
She more just is like, I saw what I saw.
But she fully accepts that, she's not making excuses, not saying she hallucinated, nothing. She's like, there is magic, and Legendborns and E-cells, and these things are real, and I saw it, and what does this mean?
Well, she actually slips off, like, feeling scared of Cell. Like, the last thing she thinks about is the E-cell scream when Cell destroyed it. That's the last thing she thinks about. So she knows, like, that really reinforces to her, like, how dangerous this beautiful, strange boy is.
Right. He's like, something's going on over here, and clearly nobody else is seeing it, and it's terrifying. What a way to, like, acknowledge that or to, like, realize magic is real, and it'd be like some scary stuff.
And they're battling people. They're battling creatures.
Yeah. It's like when Amari found out that when Amari found out that magic was real, it was a little scary. They had them Bigfoots in the middle of the lobby or whatever. We're going from whimsy to a little dark, but I love it here. Wizard Team is back for a new season, and with that comes a few changes. The one we're most excited about, other than reading Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, is that the Patreon chat is back. Support our work by becoming a B&C baddie at any tier, and you'll be able to watch us record live weekly, have your thoughts included on the podcast, and interact with other baddies. Go to patreon.com/blacknerdscreate to join. Okay, chapter 4. So the next morning, Bree gets woken up by Alice, who is like, we got to meet with the dean in 15 minutes. Don't be late. And then she leaves. So Alice is still pissed. Sleeping on it did not really help the situation for her.
But didn't she wake Bree up?
I guess they're still kind of in it.
Didn't she wake Bree up?
She woke Bree up, yeah. Well, because they have this meeting with the dean. And so, like, she's like, you got to get up. Which is fair, you know, at least she woke her up and didn't just leave her in the
Right, and this is what I'm saying about, like, Alice still obviously being mad at Bree, but, like, I'm not gonna let you miss this meeting, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, you gonna get up, you gonna go to this meeting, you're gonna face the music.
And, like, yeah, so Alice, so she wakes her up, is like, we have this meeting, dips, but doesn't wait for her, basically. Is like, I'm still pissed, I'll see you there, whatever. So Bree kind of has to, you know, get up, figure out what's going on, and head over across campus to the dean's office. We get this, like, description of the campus as she goes. Part of it is, like, I mean, we see it a lot in the book. Like, it comes up more than once of, like, all of these different monuments to the Confederacy and, like, racist past of the campus, and, like, how it's kind of just there. And like, is something that, you know, the Black students in particular, and, like, faculty and staff have to kind of just, like, deal with, while everyone else is just, you know, either wants it to be there or is indifferent to it, and it doesn't impact them in any
it being
kind of
there
way.
for so long is, like, it's normalized. So they've normalized it to an extent that they're like, well, only if you're being woke do you actually care. And it's like, no, you chose to normalize something brutal and awful and horrible, and then just expect everyone else to get with the program of actually normalizing the existence of hate in a public square.
Exactly.
Rather than actually.
And it's like, you see all of the, like, regular, or not regular, but just, like, you know, you see, like, this campus and all these kids and, like, students walking around, and, like, the descriptions of this campus, and then you're like, oh, and there's also a Confederate statue. So it's just like, it blends into the rest of the setting and atmosphere, and it's like, you know, just as sinister as the easel and whatever gate and cell, you know, being murderous. Like, these things are, like, go hand in hand, and as we, like, keep going, like, we see how they're also connected. So yeah, so we get to the dean, and we're, you know, treated to, I think I wrote microaggressions too, electric boogaloo. It's just more of the same of, like, what we get with the cops. So the dean is like, well, first Bree gets in there, she tries to kind of take the blame off of Alice, you know, trying to look out for her girl, and that immediately backfires. Dude is like, oh, you know, did you force her to come out with it? Which is like, I've heard that before, you know what I mean, like, from parents and stuff, of, like, you know, you make your own decisions. If you know, if your friends jumped off a bridge, you're gonna follow them type situation. But in the way that he says it, it's in a way that kind of, again, paints Alice as being passive and, like, playing into these stereotypes of her as an Asian kid, and, like, or Asian woman. And
I also, though, want to point out, like, there is definitely that, like, on the race side, but I just went through this with my brother too, where we were taking an Uber and he just hopped in the car and I was like, yo, you didn't do the check, like, and I think there's also a gender misunderstanding of, like, if my girlfriend, who is Black as well and young, is going somewhere,
I'm going with her. Like,
it's not about being passive. Yeah. It's about safety as well. If I tried to talk her out of it, but she is set on it, there is not an option for her to go by herself. Mm-hmm. That's not an option. Like, you know. So I think Charlotte, also,
okay, so then everybody's gonna get up to, like.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, I feel like, and I don't know if this is true or not, because I think that, like you said, we've all heard this from your parents, like, if your friends jump off a cliff, are you going to do it too? But, like, I do think that there is a sense of, like, if the dean was a black woman or a woman of color or a woman,
that wouldn't be a thing. And also because it's immediately followed up with like, you know, talking about, oh, Bree, I think there was a part where he said that like Bree was disrespectful to the cop or whatever. Like it's playing again, it's playing them against each other with these like racial stereotypes. And again, they have to take it. Like they can't, it's not like in this situation like
he's the one with the power.
They're already in trouble too.
Yeah, he's the one who's the authority figure who has power. They have very little power and are hoping at least to not get expelled. So what do you do in that situation?
Exactly.
And they also like clearly broke the rules and did something.
They don't have a ground to stand on where they can argue back.
They don't have them. They don't really have, because the moral high ground always ends with, but did you
break the rules?
Leave campus? You know,
right?
Like, you broke the rules,
which is again which is, you know, also part of this because you should be able to hold both at once. One shouldn't trump the other. But it often does in these kinds of situations.
And he also says something about like y'all directly went against the contract that you signed. Like they like physically signed that. And I feel like a lot of adults, whenever teenagers first come to campus, they consistently are like, you agree to this, own your adultness, you're now going to be more responsible for things than you used to be. So whenever you say you're going to do something, that is a commitment that we're holding you to. Like they're very strict about that when you get to college, like, because I feel like they're just like, oh, we're going to keep banging it into their heads that everything is on them, when honestly it's not. Like getting a loan to pay for school, like there's no way, you know what I mean? Like you, like, oh, that's all on you, you decided it's just time for this loan. Sir, if I knew that my chances of graduating with a degree was not going to guarantee me a job to pay off this loan by the time I left this school,
talk about it.
Then would we be here? Would this happen? You know what I mean? And who sold us that? Adults. So let's talk about who actually holds responsibility for what here. But that's all to say. I feel like that's like him saying that. It's not something I have not heard before, even like on the HBCU campus, even with adults who kind of know more about like your background of Black like admins and stuff. They will say similar stuff about like, you agreed to this, and so as a young person, I am looking for you to take up for your responsibility.
Yeah. So they're not being expelled, but they are being given peer mentors. Bree is not happy about this, but sometimes you need a peer mentor. She's like, we don't need a babysitter, and it's like, well.
And the fact that Alice looks at her too, like, girl,
sorry.
This, like, I had babysitting you last night at the Quarry because you was gonna go by yourself if I didn't go with you. You're not serious.
It's like
you are not serious.
I get it, but Bree, in this case, this one you just gotta go ahead and let that one slide. You might. Honestly, it feels like they should just give them peer mentors.
Yeah.
In general, you know what I mean? Like
that, right? Like, that was one thing I was gonna say. It's like it feels like just like a good
for the first.
I was in I was in a scholarship program where it wasn't like mandated that you had to like be with these mentors, but you were paired up with people who were in the scholarship, like who were probably a year older than you, with the hopes of just like having, you know, support and having whatever. I don't do group projects, so I was not very involved, but it does just seem like a good idea, right? Like someone who was successful in the program to help shepherd you through. But yeah, I also think like, Bree, this is when you should have been like, thank you, sir. Will do, sir.
I feel like that's something that
that's when you just gotta.
You won't see us again,
get
sir.
Into more is
cut it and go.
Like the undercurrent to, because you know, grief brings with it, yes, immense sadness, but tied to sadness a lot of times is anger, and Bree's like level of anger is very volatile. Like right now, it's not consistently, like she's not stabilizing it. Like if she's only barely able to maintain a reign of control over how much anger she feels. So it's clear in her interaction with like Dean McCannon, she knows she's wrong. She knows like he's the authority figure. She recognizes that he has the ability to like decide what happens next with her and Alice. So it's not like that she doesn't know how she should react in this moment. It's just that she does not want to because she is that angry. Like she's gonna is bucking her will to do the right to do the thing that needs to be done versus her will to say how she feels are battling each other out at every moment. And this is one of those moments where it's just like flaring out a little bit.
So yeah, so that meeting's over. The dean does talk to Bree a little bit after, like has Alice leave and talks to her separately. You know, tries to appeal to, you know, your mom was an alumni and whoop-de whoop-de whoop, but none of that helps because again, Bree just lost her mom. Like,
I think though this is also something where and well, I don't know if no, they fight after this meeting, but this is also the first time that we see that like Bree, at least from like the dean's eyes, and like and Alice kind of reinforces this, is that like Bree is very gifted and special, and like a lot of this stuff does come easily to her in a way that I don't think that we fully understand until now, of like she's her the expectations on her are kind of higher than they are for the normal early college student in terms of like performance and things like that. I don't know. What I got from like Dean McKinnon in this too is like your mom was. This reminds me of kind of Amari, when Amari was talking about how Quentin kind of set this like impossible standard type of thing, but like your mom was a distinguished alumni. Like I like the dean is like, we didn't know each other very well, but we were at school at the same time. Like I like knew of her, you know what I mean? Like she set this like reputation for herself that now Bree is kind of stepping into, but also with her academic record and things like that people kind of expect her to live up to and possibly exceed.
But there's also like this kind of like, distinction that can't be helpful. It's kind of weird when he says that like Alice is an exemplary student, but with your mother's legacy and your test scores, you have the potential for brilliance, as opposed to her already being brilliant. It gives me those vibes of like when we were discussing Amari and the Night Brothers, of just like, oh, you have to prove your brilliance, or you know what I mean, that like you have to prove yourself kind of situation again, which doesn't really feel good, I guess. This may be the best way to say that. Like, and also again, the comparison to her mother as well in this kind of situation is not in any way useful, but I don't think that the dean cares, so there's that. So yeah, moving on. So I guess more Bree and Alice talk, because now they get into a fight. Hate this for everyone. So I guess my thing, I don't want to like read through it because I do want to, you know, I don't want to go too long, but it's one of those things, again, we've already kind of talked about it, where Alice had this expectation of how things were going to go when they got here, and it's not turning out that way. And like, yes, Bree is tripping in some ways, in the fact that like, you know, she dragged them out to this illegal party, she went missing in the woods, and then they had to, you know, take the cop car there. The reason that they're in this situation, that they are like on probation, have to have these peer mentors, is yes, technically because of Bree, but I also felt like Alice doesn't have the like, again, she's holding on to these things that she thought was going to happen, and she's not leaving space for Bree being different and having to deal with her grief and these things being a manifestation of that, and not necessarily just like something else. Or like, that's not necessarily her just like tripping just because she feels like it, or like her becoming different because she's in this
right, because there is that thought process. Like my brother, when he went to college, I remember him like calling my parents and being like, you better make sure that Robyn goes outside more, because these girls who were sheltered, they come to college and they be tripping. Like, and there is that. And
I mean, I remember specifically when I went to college, and like my dorm mates, I could tell which of my dorm mates lived a sheltered life. and lived a sheltered life in a way that they wanted and like,
to, like,
and also not necessarily while out. Because I'm like, I wasn't necessarily like not sheltered. My parents didn't let me do just anything, but they also like, I was protected, but they also let me do and experience things so that by the time I'm by myself, I don't feel like.
And also, like, I think you and I shared this too. Like, a part of my personality was like, I don't want to do all that. Like, if I wanted to, my mom made me go to prom. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she, you know what I mean? She used to, like, I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. Like, I used to get sent outside as punishment. Like, I wasn't trying to be out there like that. And that's an innate thing to me. Like, that was my personality, right? So I got to college and I did like explore a little bit more than I would have, but like I also wasn't wilding out because I'm not the kind of person that does that. And I think that for a minute, Alice has forgotten that like the shift is brought on by Bree's grief, and is kind of thinking like, oh, did you get to college and think that we were gonna be like partying and out here just like, because like that's not what I signed up for,
right?
And like, that's not what Bree is trying to... She's trying, like we said, she's trying to distract herself, and she's grasping at straws for distraction, but, like, it could have been a Quarry party, it could have been a party, like, on a boat, it could have been a campfire in the woods, like, it was just...
It could have been anything.
Whatever, to, like, be outside of herself for a while. But I do get that, like...
Right. And also, like, and then we... So it's that, and then also, so this is the point. I realized when I was reading it, I was like, this is the point where I was like, you know what? I don't think I really mess with Alice. And obviously, I go through a journey. I'm trying to put you in the head of me reading this, 3 years ago. And it was the point where she starts, like, pointing out the classes that Bree's taking and, like, calling them slacker classes. Like, oh, you could do this in your sleep. You already know these things. But it's like, she has gone through a major trauma. And if she wants to take classes that are easy for her so that she can get her brain together and, like, go through the grief and the process of, like, still grieving her mother who just died, like, let her take whatever classes she wants. Why would she go for the, like, things that are going to challenge her when everything else is challenging her?
And, like, Bree thinks, like, I didn't think that they were soccer classes. So they also think that there was, like, this moment, too, where you think, like, yeah, this... in high school would be an easy class for me, but now I'm in college, so like I'm gonna take the classes that I'm interested in,
and that plus that like switch is real. Like you
so
have
it's like
to adjust
taking an English class in high school is one thing. Taking an English class, like our intro to English or whatever, I forget the name of that class that she like points out. Like you could write papers in your sleep. Like I could write high school papers in my sleep, but like let's calm down. I would like to assume that the standard is higher at UNC Chapel Hill, like not a slacker school. So
not to stand up for Alice, but I will say that like I think that came from a place of petty. I don't think that came from a place of actual like consideration. I think that came from a place of like
it is something that she's thought about. Like she does say,
okay,
like,
but what I'm saying is like she's holding on to it pettily. It's not something she's actually actively like. It's like, oh, she didn't bring that up to Bree as Bree was filling it out. It's not like something that she's like, I feel like it's something she's holding out pettily of like, boys, first we went to a party. The thing that you're trying to talk to me about is a dang boy. And then like, is this what we're doing? Are we just here vibing and not studying? Because you've been able to not study this whole time and get it on time.
And I get that. My thing is like from her perspective, sure, but I just think that there's a big thing that she's
I get what you're saying. What I'm saying, not
you know what I mean, and like,
but yeah, I kind of get what you're saying too, Porshèa.
I'm saying that Alice's brain is like she's like she has in her brain, oh, I know Bree's gonna be different because she's going through grief. She did not realize that grief, like, again, I feel like she in her brain that Bree's grief is probably going to be like similar to how she related to Bree before, which seems to be like a quieter kind of internal kind of a grief. And now she's like, am I now recognizing that she's going to be different? Like she's not doing it the way that I thought she was going to do it. And if that's so, then we got to have a confrontation about this because I'm not on board. I think
too, there's also a little bit of jealousy there of like, and it's something that Alice has kept a lid on. I think she understands that it's like petty. It's not Bree's fault, and it's not something that she should take out on Bree, that things come easily to her. But I think that was a moment where she's already mad at her. She's like, we're talking about boys, we're going to parties, and like, I'm like, it's an anxiety thing of like Alice being like, I have to work really hard. Like I am in my head getting ready to like study my ass off, like heads down to just make it, and you're flaunting in my face how much easier this stuff comes to you. Like, you could at least pretend to have to work, and that is a misreading of the situation. Yeah.
And again, I get that.
Yeah, they're both misreading each other.
But also, I get if this situation was, if all of the things that have happened, and Bree had not gone through, like, her mother dying recently, like, yes, I would 100% be on Alice's side. But I think, and I understand where she's coming from. I just, again, like, I just feel like she's just missing a big chunk of the situation. You know what I mean? And again, it's because we've talked about it already, like, not having that same lived experience, not really knowing, like, how grief shows up and what that looks like, right? If you haven't experienced it in that way, you might think it's like, oh, she's just sad sometimes, or like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, not really understanding the many different ways that can show up.
And she's not going to school to be a psychologist. She's going to school to do law. Right. Like, her brain is not, she doesn't think that way. She's not thinking empathize. That's not who she is.
Yeah, I'm just team Bree in this situation. I do understand both sides, but this, and also I don't think Bree is 100% right here. Like, she does, again, like, she kind of brushes off the situation. She doesn't, like, completely, like, she does apologize, but then she kind of immediately tries to move on to, like, what was going on with Cell, and I think that also is what sets Alice off completely. And once Alice kind of like, you know, throws the classes and all that kind of stuff in her face, I think Bree is immediately, again, it's like, this is when she's trying to pull her walls back up, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, okay, you're not actually understanding what's happening to me and how difficult this is for me to be here, just to be here, period. Like, she even says, like, just being here is already hard. And Alice doesn't really get that, and so
but they haven't
trying to explain that.
This is the main
right, but I'm saying, instead of trying to explain that, she instead lashes
out. But I'm just saying, this is like the biggest trope of all the tropes in all the lands. It's miscommunication, and they just have not spoken to each other without being pissed off. If they could just have a moment where they're like, let's breathe.
Yeah. And without assuming.
Let's just breathe so I can explain to you. I see how this looked like XYZ to you. Let me explain where I was in my head when this was occurring. So you understand, I can see how it looks like I'm just being ridiculous. What's actually happening is I just need to be different right now. I can't be the same. And this is how it's coming out. For Alice, it's like, I know you want me to be your friend, but I can only support you insofar that I feel like we're not doing something outside of my lane. So as much as I want to be there for you, and I know you're doing something very hard, I don't want to be going on a journey with you that takes me out of school, which is what I'm here for. So like, they need to but they need to get there, and they're just not having that moment.
They're not getting there. And it kind of ends in the point of, like, Alice being like, maybe you should just go home. And just kind of being like, you know, not saying it outright, but Bree is kind of understanding it as, like, you know, she would rather just do this on her own instead of having to also look after.
What's sad about it is that Bree wants a distraction, and to Alice, Bree is the distraction.
And I think too, it's like, I feel I have these friends where I'm like, you are an energy vampire, and I love you, and when I have the energy to give, I'm more than willing to give it to you, but sometimes I don't have the energy. But like you were saying, Bayana, it's like, you have to, it's empathy, it's a lot of these things, but you have to, like, look outside yourself, and you also have to, like, for both of them, put up boundaries. Like, it might be, I personally think that it turns out to be pretty good for Bree that Alice takes a step back because then she's not off
trying to figure out
how to lie, but she's also like not feeling the guilt of being like, I need the distraction, you don't want the distraction, but like I'm not gonna stop because I can't sit with myself, and then I feel guilty because I've dragged you along with me, you know. So I feel like it turns out to be what they both need, but it's just a difficult situation. Where are you going? Okay.
And in this moment, they're like, they're not fortune tellers. They don't know what's going to happen next to their friendship. So like for them, this could feel like, oh, is this it? Is this the final note to our friendship? Like, is this where we go our separate ways? Because you're changing as a person and I'm changing. Alex is kind of staying the same as a person, and we're just kind of like growing away from each other right now. And so I can feel that also is like, that's a component of the bitterness in the situation, is that they are concerned with whether they're losing each other when they think they need each other most, when they're away from home. And like the first time they're actually like being away from home, you would think they would be leaning into each other, and they're really upset at the fact that like, am I losing this person that I've been able to rely on for so long just when I need them to be there for me, you know?
So yeah, so again, like Bree at this point is kind of just like, she's building her walls back up, and she's just like, okay, you know what, like at this point you might as well, I think in her head she's kind of like, might as well push her away and keep her at a distance in the way that like she has with everyone else. So she says at the end, she says, how about you grow up and get a life instead of blaming me for your choices? Alice steps back. The crack in her voice goes straight to my heart. I don't know who you are right now, Bree. And then she walks away. Again, that I think we've kind of covered it at this point, but I'm like, yeah, you don't. Like, things have changed. And again, it's not to say that like it's difficult when your friends like change, you know, for whatever reason. But there is like, I don't know. I just, in that chapter, I'm very much on Bree's side, even if I feel like she could have approached it differently, and I think they both could have come at it with a different energy. But it also tracks for like that age and that friendship, and also just like in terms of experience and perspective, like they both have very narrow perspectives at this point.
Yep. And with that, we take all this bitterness and anger and just chaos and step into chapter 5, where literally the first sentence for this is, anger cascades through me so entirely I can taste it. Like, that is where Bree is right now. And she wanders back to she doesn't know where she's going. She's just wandering out of the office. She's having this moment. She's noticing schools like effectively like already starting, and so she's noticing students roaming through campus. And she's thinking through like her friendship with Alice and how they had talked about the program being a grand adventure that they would conquer together. And she feels like she's alone. And her bitter part of her brain is saying maybe that's how it should be. One less memory of before Bree to live up to. And it's very clear that she's kind of like seeing this as moment is like, again, like, is this a growing moment for me? Is letting go of Alice mean that I'm letting go of every expectation that anyone can have for who I was before my mother passed away? And that means I no longer have to hold on to her. I don't have to like live up to who I was before. I can now be this whole other person and not have to manage expectations of who I should be based on who people knew me to be, right? Because the only people she really knows on campus are Alice and Charlotte, and we see how close she is to Charlotte. So Alice is the only person who's really on campus to kind of like hold that in her brain. And then she's also, as she's thinking through this, she's also kind of working through whether like being alone feels good. Like, so it strangely feels good to her. And then the next thing is that happens is she gets a buzz. So again, her phone does work. when she wants to pay attention to it. And the text from her number she doesn't recognize. The punctuation is "Hi, Brianna!" Exclamation mark. This is Nick Davis. Dean McKinnon gave me your number so we can get started today. Want to meet up after classes? And Bree's still thinking about them as thinking about the peer mentor as the babysitter, and so she's like, nope, I'm not gonna answer it. And then
can I say
phone,
one thing? Sorry,
I think it's really
real quick.
Okay.
Again, the male privilege thing of it all. Dean, why are you giving out someone's phone number? There should be an email. You can't just have my personal number. I don't know you. I've never met you. You don't get a fake number?
She just walked away from the office.
She just left.
She just walked away from the office. So just as soon as
he said, "Okay, cleared up here," he was like, "Here's a phone number. Here's the class schedule."
Like that is, and then also to pair her with a man. A man. Yeah. Like I was trying so hard. I get excited because I know where this goes.
He's a year ahead of her in the program.
Okay, sure, he's 17, but whatever. He's a boy. Yeah. He's a man. He's a yeah. And then also, I felt like I know where this goes, and so the first read through, I might have had the same like, ew, why are you texting me? But I don't think that. I think I quickly was like, ooh, love triangle. Because you know me, I'm a sucker for some romance. But this time, I was literally like, no, I wouldn't have answered that either. I need you to email me.
No.
Oh, no.
Well, the thing is that I think I would have, like, it's not like she was not told
this
that this person would be contacting her. You know what I mean? Like I might be like, oh dang, you got my phone number? Like
I would take my sweet time.
I guess, but I don't think I would be like as
context.
Because within the like I think that there are like within the context, I think it's fine. Like you were told that they would be contacting you today, and that y'all would need to like set up, you know, time to talk or meet or whatever. Like whether that's email or text. I personally don't really see it as an issue unless she hadn't been told. But I also get why she didn't answer. Like, you know, she hasn't been answering any
exactly.
calls and phones, so it's not like he's special.
I just talk about the irony of the fact that I keep talking about Bree not answering stuff, and I'm like, that's me. I'd be reading the text, and I'd be like, oh, I'll answer that later, and then I'm like, oh crap, it's 2 days later. This is awkward.
Yeah, for me, I thought it was really interesting, and like obviously we haven't met Nick, but we've barely met Sel, and so I think that like
the meetings
contrast between their first interactions are really funny to me. Like Sel's all like dark and mysterious, and then he's doing a little bit too much, you know what I mean, grabbing and like, who are you and all this stuff, and Nick's just like, hey Brianna, what's going on? You want to meet up? Like, it's very, like, it's giving camp counselor.
Yeah.
And it's just, the contrast is really funny.
Yeah. So she's texting, after she denies his text, her phone continues to alert her. This time it's her father. She's like, oh crap, not ready to deal with this. And of course you would think like, oh, if the dean had enough time to give this random boy my phone number, then I know what this phone call's about to be about. But instead, she has a pretty pleasant conversation with her father. His main thing is that he's concerned about whether she's like her actual well-being. Is she making friends?
She got a community.
Is she eating?
Has she found her community? He's like, I know them Confederate them Confederate statues all over that place. I need you to find your people.
Yeah. He's like, have you eaten? Or what are we doing? And she's like, I'm gonna say it's a negative for all those things. No, I have not found any black kids. It's also not been a full day of school yet, so don't hold me to that. When's your first class? 10 a.m. Have you had breakfast yet? Not hungry. Then that gives him an alert. Like, okay, that's what grief does to you. It does change your, like, how you eat, your appetite. And so he starts to, like, have a moment with her where he's talking to her about components of a book that she knows that he's had since her mother's death. And she's, like, irked at the fact that she knows that he's using info from a book. But also, she's like, this man's checking on me and I'm not well, but I gotta sound like I'm okay enough so he won't try to come up here and get me. So
Yeah.
she's like balancing that
I
out
like.
with him.
Yeah, and I think it was in the last one of the last chapters that we discussed last episode, maybe chapter 1, where she was just talking about like the differences in her grief and her dad's grief and how they don't always like fit together, and how that is like another reason why she wanted to leave and kind of be on her own. So it's interesting, like in this we actually get to kind of see that, but we also see how they care for each other at the same time.
I also think it's an interesting take on like it's grief for Bree, but I think it's also just like strong emotions in general and like being overwhelmed emotionally, that like this is the best time to just come clean. And she's like, I don't want to deal with it, so I'm not going to deal with it, because he is concerned. He's asking you about how you're doing, and you get to set the narrative. You get to tell him the whole thing from your perspective, because obviously he has not talked to the dean yet, and she's like, nah, I'm just not going to do it, knowing that he is going to find out. It's a matter of time.
The dean said to her face that they're going to call their parents.
It's just timing. Like, you have the perfect opportunity to, like, you're about to get a call from the dean.
That is a lack of experience.
I already know. I'm very, very sorry. This is all of the things. Like, I'm going to meet with the peer mentor. I'm going to do everything that they tell me, Dad. Like, and she's just like, nah.
And especially because she knows this man's already concerned about her. So, like, you don't think as soon as this phone call's over and he finds out, he's not going to be even more concerned? Like, your concern is him not coming to get you. Let me do everything in your power.
Not come get you.
Keep that man from coming to get you. Do everything in your power. Fumbled. But that's what I'm saying. It shows a lack of experience for her not having gotten in trouble before like this, and not like having to navigate just getting ahead of something, whatever. She's not done that, but you can tell she's never done it, because like she's like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna worry about it. Like, which is probably too, again, like you said, she's overwhelmed. But at the same time, it's like, nah, you can be overwhelmed and know, like, again, if you're trying to cover your butt so you can, like, keep things the way that they are, then there's some things you got to do. And then she's talking to him, but she's holding in a lot in her brain. She has a moment where she's trying to pull her wall back up, but her dad just, like, it's her dad, so he blows through her defense, and she doesn't have a defense for her dad. And even though she doesn't have a defense, she is holding a lot in her brain. She's talking to him, and she's like, I appreciate you asking, but I'm okay. Being here is, and in her brain, she really feels scary, lonely, messy, but good for me is what comes out of her mouth.
Is it?
And you're like, is it though? And I don't necessarily think it isn't. I think that, like, either way, things are going to be like this, regardless of where she's at. It's just a matter of, like, the support that she has, or if she feels like she needs that space, you know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Also, shout out to Mr. Matthews, Bree's dad, because I also feel like in this scene and in this chapter, I'm like, when Bree's mom told him that they were going to have a baby, this man went out and did What to Expect When We're Expecting. He was like, let me do my home. Like, so we hear about, like, Bree's mom being a botanist and all of this stuff, but, like, the preparation, he is like, nah, man, I'm reading the books. I'm going to quote these books back to you. Do we need to do we need to do something else? Is the books not working? Because we can figure out something else. Like, I just love not present dad, because, like, you could be present and, like, you could show up for Bree in a lot of ways, but, like,
emotionally it's
and also, like, we're going through this together. We're learning all of this together, but I'm still gonna be your dad, and, like, if you have any question, like, I'm gonna be as prepared as I can be, so that we're both figuring this out together, but, like, I am still here to field questions, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm doing the extra research. I'm doing the extra credit. I'm a prepared partner.
Right. And
it's not a group project where you're gonna
And the next thing he says and it's also exemplified like in his response to her saying that like, oh, this is good for me, is he's like, he's not down, he's like, that's BS. You know, like there's some people who are like, I feel like I'm blunt. I'm like, okay, so I know you're playing, but while we're like, I know you're saying that you're okay, but I don't think you're actually okay, so let's talk. He uses like, he's like, baby, and he's the teeniest tremor in his voice that makes her chest go tight. You keep saying you're okay, but this thing that's happening to us, I feel it too. I know it feels real bad. So he's like, he cuts through her defenses like a hot knife through butter, because he's like, I know you, and I know me, and I know how I'm feeling. So you're not going through this alone. We're both going through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're saying you're okay, but I hear your voice, and I know your voice, and I know when you're actually okay. And you're not okay, but neither am I.
There's something about a parent.
Yeah.
Like, it's honestly, like, I talk about this all the time. Like, I am generally not a crier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really do that. And, for better or worse, like, sometimes I think, like, I probably should cry more, but, like, generally not. And when I'm stressed, I tend to hold it in. I tend to, like, let it, you know what I mean? And, like, usually the first people I admit it to are to my parents. But also, sometimes they just have this way of looking at you,
mm-hmm.
or they phrase something a certain way, or they just, like, ask you a question in this, like, specific tone, and then the
mm-hmm.
waterworks. Like, my dad will do something similar to what Bree's dad did, where he'll just be like, yeah, I know that you're stressed about X, Y, Z. I remember, like, right before I graduated college, he, like, I don't remember what we were talking about, but he did that, and I just started bawling. And I was like, what the... what the hell is this? But, like, I swear to God, like, nobody can make me cry.
Your mom, though, does have, like, a very special gift for it, where it's not even, like, it is your parents, because, like, my parents can do the same thing, too. My like, they have a cheat code, but also your mom, because she'll do that lawyery, get you with the facts thing. She'll, like, lay out the situation in a way that you're like, well, God damn it, that does not help with my coping mechanism of ignoring all of this stuff.
Like, she does that, but then she also
and then she does this, like, soft voice thing.
So it's very
and I'd
much
be like, Auntie,
bro,
I need you to.
Like, I literally, like,
And I'm not Bayana. I cry. I be bawling.
Sometimes I just be like, you know what? I'm going to tell him, and I'm going to tell him real matter of fact, and then I'm going to move on.
Don't look at me. Literally don't look at me. That's why my mom is a crier.
Don't look at me.
And, like, every time I would fly back to school or whatever, like, it's at the airport. This lady, if I'm coming into the airport, like, I'm here to hang out for a while, crying. I'm leaving to go back to school, crying. And I'm like, lady, stop it. Don't look at me. Look what.
My mom literally, I think we talked about last episode how, like, I literally went to school at the street from, like, where I lived for a semester, but my mom literally drove me, it was a 2-minute drive from our house to campus, and she was crying as we were going up the I don't know, you know, like, the main road. I can't think of the road right in the street right now, but, like, literally crying as we're going onto campus, and I was just like, I was like, I'll probably be back.
I only got a couple of classes
like,
today.
I can walk home.
I don't even have classes. It's literally orientation. It's like, I can literally walk home. But yeah, no, emotional parents, bro, and especially because it's like they know their kids. So even if it's, like, not something as huge as what Bree's going through, but it's like, if you're just stressed or you just have a lot, they're like, oh, I see. So you're dealing with X, 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 and Y. And you're like, bro, who asked you? First of all.
Like, do you see?
That's how my dad is. My dad just says it straight up. I know you're handling this, and I know you're dealing with this, and I know you're afraid of this. And I'm like,
who told you?
But also, my thing is, like,
talk to me about this.
If you know me so well, then you also know that my coping mechanism is avoidance. So let me do that. Stop confronting me with shit that I'm working very hard to not confront. Let my coping cope. Let me cope.
No, for real.
That's how I like look like if you don't look at me while you're crying, then I can be fine. So can you just leave me alone right now? Like I'm gonna walk away.
No.
I gotta get away.
They be all up in your face, like, and I know, yep. And what are we gonna
do? It's that
like,
Beyonce. All up in your mind.
I didn't mean
like,
to.
God damn it, get out my mind. Get out my mind, please.
Literally.
Like in this moment, what I'm gonna
I feel for Bree because it's like I'm trying to keep it together here, and I'm in the middle of campus sobbing. Thanks, Dad.
Right. I got a reputation to build here, and this I can't be known as the girl who started crying. I'm trying to get away from being the girl whose mom died back home, and then you gonna have me out here crying on campus, looking for the girl who cried on the quad? No, we're not doing that, sir. Pull it together. So that's why I feel Bree is basically there. And so she's able to grit out, "I'm good, Dad." And then she stares at the veranda under her feet. She's trying to ground herself because her vision is tunneling. It goes sharp and then blurry because that's tears. And then he's like, "Okay, at least get some food in your stomach before class." And she's like, "Will do." And then he says, "Where do we begin?" And she clenches the phone tighter to her ear. This is a thing that they say when one of us is overwhelmed, at the beginning. And he says, "That's my girl. I'll talk to you."
And then
later.
she said, "So, Dad, you're about to get a phone call, and I just want to set the scene. It's not as bad as it seems,
right. You know what I mean?
Like some funky stuff is going on, and I haven't quite figured it out yet, but
she should have said starting. Since we're talking about starting at the beginning." Well, we're right. Let me start at the beginning.
What happened was.
So what had happened was
starting at the beginning, you see, and so
you see. I started at the beginning of the parties before semester.
You told me to find a community, and there was this girl that I knew from home, and so I was trying to find a community. You know what I mean?
Just.
Oh my god.
Gotta finesse it. Gotta finesse it. But does she do that? No, because she's in her feelings. So when they hang up, she's shaking. Her breath is in short pants. Her heat climbs around her. She's doing her best to not bawl on the quad. She's doing her best to hold it together. And she says, "This is why I left. I love my father, but his words puncture every single layer of my wall until it may as well not exist. His grief makes my own emotions break across my skin like an earthquake, opening me up to no." She whispers into her palms, but it's too late. The memories swell and overtake her. So Bree goes through this thing where a conversation with her father about grief triggers her into actually reliving the moments where she found out about her mother passing away. She relives getting the information. She relives seeing how she felt in that moment. And then she's also reliving, is that magic from the police officer? So she's starting to have a realization now. Again, it's a distraction of sorts that's helpful to her while she's having these visions of grief. That, wait a minute, there's magic in this. So for the first,
and sorry, I love we mentioned it in last episode, but I just want to reiterate how much I love the way that her grief and her magic are intertwined and how they one unlocks the other, if that makes sense. I love the way that Tracy writes it, because it's it's just very interesting, and her having this flashback and then suddenly being wait a second, that's not what happened, is a crazy thing to have happen to your memory, to be wait, this is not what happened. So yeah, it's just very well done.
Yeah, so to her, a new image dislodges itself with a violent crack, like an iceberg is in the ocean. And then she sees a silver badge on a breast pocket flashing, a body shimmering, and the police officer's blue eyes holding her gaze than her father's, with his mouth murdering words that I can't hear, words flowing to the room, and then a cold wind sweeping through her mind. And then just as quickly the memory ends. And because she's figured out that Cell has mind control powers, now she's having a moment where she's like, Have I been mind controlled before by this rando
Mm.
police officer? And so she spends the next not only like her walking to class, but actually class time, sitting and wondering through what happened when her mother passed away and did the officer do a spell on her. Um, and she's wondering how he's related to Cell, to the King's Mage thing, to the Merlin thing, the Legendborn network. That she's just like, she's going through classes, just like not at all in the moment with the class. She's in her headspace with trying to untangle this like mystery that she has started to pull together. Um, and she loses time. The professor talks. She doesn't write a thing. And then her phone buzzes. Her father says, "Not Bree, not my child." He says, "Brianna, period." I got a phone call from the Chins, then a phone call
Damn.
from the dean. Going off campus? Trespassing? The police? You need to call me back ASAP.
I just feel like, yeah, she just fumbled. It's a hard one. And I think also, like, she's very clearly, like, fixated on
Yeah,
this magic situation, right? Like, even when she was talking to Alice,
yeah.
like, that was the thing that set Alice
Even
off.
when she was in the
Well,
cop
wait,
car.
this other thing is going on. And like, obviously, Bree mentions a boy, but, like, she was getting to, I
Yeah.
saw some crazy shit.
But even when she was in the cop
real.
car, like she's actually literally within the freaking space, like unsafe space. She felt unsafe, and she still was fixated on.
Thinking about magic.
Is
She's
this
like,
a
what
quiet
is going
enough
on with
space for me to
Sal
debrief Alice about the thing I just saw?
Right. And, like, I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if something like that happened, I don't know, who would I tell? And, like, we would need to figure this out. So I understand that part of it. But it's also, like, all of this other stuff doesn't matter. This is, like, her distraction, I guess is the best way to say it. She's like, no, magic is real, and something's going on here. And, like, yeah, I could take notes in class, or I could figure this out in my head. Or I could, answer my dad right away, or I could figure this out because magic is real, and this, like, almost being expelled comparatively is not, like, it doesn't matter, I guess. Yeah. I mean, and I get it, sort of.
Because she's like pushing. Her world is on fire. Her world has been on fire since her mother died, and so her being in trouble is like, oh, that's just more flames. Like, I'm already living in flames. So she's kind of like just not paying attention to the fire because she's like, my world is already on fire. Like, nothing that happens that's related to that is going to make me feel, is going to only make me feel more, and I don't want to feel. So I would rather take curiosity than take the path to like dealing with my emotions. So that's kind of like what's like the impetus between her and the distraction, but also like the fascination with what's going on. But also like I would love to have a background into like who she was prior to this all, because is she like a mystery enthusiast? Like, does she like solving things? Is that why she's like good in school, because she likes to figure things out and like that's part of her personality? Because if it's like playing into this deeper component of her personality where she's just naturally curious, then that could also explain a lot of like how that just kind of like persuades her to continue looking into what actually happened that night that her mother passed away, and how is that related to everything else that she's seeing.
I mean, and I think it also, though, is part of the fact that, like, her memory
Jumps.
like, changed
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and, like, because she just went through the situation with Cell and having her mind, like, kind of altered or, like, changed, and having it wiped, right? Like, and being able to jump out of that, and then seeing that this happened again and unlocking that memory and realizing it's happened twice, and the first time was, like, when her mom died. I think it's also just like, first it's taking her a second to like make the connection, but then when she does, I think she's like, oh no, this is more than, it becomes more than just a curiosity and a like, oh snap, like magic is real. It then becomes like a, oh no, magic is real and it has something to do with my mom's
Mm-hmm.
death.
Yeah, and it's tied
You
to
know what I
me.
mean?
Yeah.
Right, and it becomes, and again, like we talked about how like her anger so far has been unfocused. Um, but this is the moment where she like finds something to focus it and something to like um something to come, you know what I mean, like to zero in on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back a little bit and make a point about like her dad's text is like, I got a message from the Chins. I don't even think, I don't know where I put my book, but I think then the dean called him. So the dean called Alice's
Mm-hmm.
parents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alice's parents called her dad, and then the dean called him. And so it's also one of the things that like it reminds me of like the prologue where they go to Alice's parents' house and they all sit down and they like tell them together. So like Alice is also kind of dealing. Yeah, I think they
Well, I don't
all
think
no.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
No, I think Alice.
Mm-mm.
No, that Alice
Oh, okay.
sat her parents down and had that
Great.
conversation
Okay.
separately.
Sorry.
Bree told her mom that it was a blow.
But it does
Yeah.
just show that like they are close and like as like not just like, oh, Bree and Alice are best friends, but in Bree and Alice being best friends, like the parents know each other and have talked to each other and are like keeping track of each other's kids as well, right? Like my best friend's mom, like my mom is gonna tell my best friend's mom if we get into some nonsense and vice versa, because like that's how you continue to feel safe with your kids' friends. And so I think that there's also something here about like but not just like the lies of admission, which this is, but like the idea of like I'm now finding the stuff out from Alice's family and not from you, and like further putting up walls between her and Alice, right? Like, oh, we need even more separation because if I get into trouble or whatever, you tell your parents what I'm up to, they're going to tell my dad what I'm up to, and the thing that I want the most is to kind of be isolated, which is not healthy, but is what is kind of making her feel better. And so I think that there's also something in that like makes me think. I've just been thinking kind of about like in oh, we're spoiler heavy. Okay, so in Bloodmarked, Alice makes like a return and is a much bigger character, but in this book she does get kind of pushed to the sidelines, and I think that like this is another part of that separation and that isolation of like the one person in Bree's proximity who she feels like she can't hide from, right? So she can't hide from her dad, but she's been able to like go to early college, go to Chapel Hill. She's 2 hours away. And so she only really has to deal with that emotional like vulnerability on the phone, and she can kind of, feels like she has some level of control over like when she talks to him, what they talk about, like how much information she lets him know. Not just because I'm trying to hide stuff from my dad, but because of that feeling of like vulnerability that she's trying to get away from. She doesn't want to feel vulnerable. And so this also like is another thing of like, well, if I push Alice away, then that's another thing that will shield me from like that vulnerability. And so it just, it's a really interesting thing when you think about, I wish one of them was like a psychology major, but you think about like the fact that of like the illusion of control is what Bree is actually trying to get. Like we've talked a lot about distraction, but she's wants to feel distracted because she feels her grief is out of her control. She doesn't have a handle on it. So the way that she's able to control her feelings is to like really kind of shut down and separate herself from any avenue of vulnerability. And so this is just another way in which she feels vulnerable and out of control. And so I think that it informs a lot about how another reason why she's so easily willing to kind of separate herself from Alice in this moment.
Yeah, and I think there's also a point there about like the Chins and the Matthews are close enough where it's interesting that Alice has the standing agreement with her parents to go home every weekend, which I think could also include Bree if Bree wanted to go home. Like they wouldn't feel a way about bringing her too. But Bree sees it as a clear like Alice is going home every weekend, and Alice is making this place a home, and I'm not like she's building a bridge between them even before everything falls out, or she's breaking down the bridge between them before everything falls out. Um, and it's interesting like when this bridge is here, like even whenever she's not like actively trying to be part of that bridge, it's still happening without her. They're still contacting her father, and she barely registers the fact that his anger and responds to him. He gave us a warning. I'm in class right now. Can we talk later? You hid this from me on the phone. A lie of omission is still a lie. I know, Dad. I'll call you after dinner. Yes, you will. Now,
I mean, but she is in class.
She's not paying attention.
But she also knows.
Like she's brushing it off. She's brushing him off. She's 100% brushing him off. She's like it's more like it's lucky she's in class.
Yeah,
that's probably what I mean to say.
It's like it's working in her favor.
Actually,
yes.
Yeah, that she can't actually call him right now.
But it's not even that she's blowing him off. It's that she's like, it's like she's responding to like in a very teenager way of like, it's like a non-problem. He just gave us a warning. Like, I'll call you when I'm out of class. And he's like, yes, you will. Like the gravity of the situation is not, oh, we'll talk through the phone call. Like, you know it's deeper than that, but you're blowing it off right now because you don't want to think about it. Okay.
But it's also the fact that she lied.
Yeah.
Like, if she had come clean from jump, I think he would have been a lot.
That phone call would have been longer though as well. Like that, she probably would have missed class. Yeah.
It would have been longer. He would have been like, this isn't, why you're at school. There would have been that, but the fact that she lied makes it.
I also think too, and then again, this is why I like stand a emotionally aware man. Stand no man, but if you must stand one that's emotionally aware. He is filtering all of this through the lens of her grief. And the way that we just talked about Alice not really being able to like empathize or really be able to like see the full, like see with like actual clarity, like that these actions from Bree are like cries for help or calling out, or they all stem from the same place. Her dad is very clearly, because he's going through it as well, like, I see these impulses, I know where these come from, and so it's not I don't think that he is questioning her character the way that it felt kind of like Alice was a little bit, like, what is, like, who are you becoming, so much as, like, you know better,
like,
these
better.
Are all red flags of, like, you're in crisis right now, and I'm trying to do best for you. I'm trying to do good by you, but like, if the way that you're coping with this isn't actually going to be good for you, then we're going to do it my way. And I think that's kind of the warning.
Also, it's
not like, oh, you're out here trying to party. You're out here like, I don't think that he is.
Well, we haven't heard him respond to the party yet. We've just seen him responding to the fact that
yeah, but I mean, even the lives and stuff, like, I don't see him thinking, like, it doesn't sound like he is responding like, oh, you think you're grown. So much as like, oh no, we are going to talk about this because like these are, like in the same way that he immediately is like, are you eating? That's a sign of grief. Like I got the same, again, it's a text message, but I got the same tone of like, oh, you're lying. You know what I mean? Like Dad has his like how to grieve or grieving while Black book open and is like looking at the thing like, oh, that's a sign, that's a symptom, and like, what does this mean for my child, and like, how do we get a handle on this before it spirals even more than it already has?
Let's do MVP and bench.
Yeah, I made Bree's dad my MVP. Mr. Matthews. I just think that, like, um, how he's, like, kind of caring for Bree and trying to give her space, but also not too much space that she, or, you know, hangs herself or can't come back from it, I think is really good. And you just can see the love that he has even in these like short conversations and text conversations. Like the love and concern and care that he has for Bree is like very evident all the way through. So
agreed. He's you know, it's obviously not easy on him too, and to him to have to like deal with his own grief and parent. Obviously lots of people have to deal with this, but it's not easy, and I think that he's, you know, doing his best. And so far it seems like he's doing a decent job, or at least as well as can be done when your kid is like not in the same
and lying
space as you. And lying. But she just discovered magic, so cut her some slack. Okay, Porshèa, your MVP.
Also, Mr. Matthews, for all the reasons y'all said, and also this man is parenting from afar with a teenage daughter who's willfully trying not to be parented, and that has to be a lot with losing like the love of his life and everything else that goes along with that. So him sticking in there and still coming from a place of empathy when his emotions are probably also all over the place. And he's grounded enough to try to relate to Bree when she's being not that easy to talk to in a moment. It's just very well done of him. Even though he's the adult, not all adults are emotionally equipped to be emotionally available when they're also going through a lot. So I really allowed that for him.
Tight. Benched.
Yeah, I went through the full gamut. I went the police officer, which was whatever his name is, Norris, the Dean McKinnon, and then also the board of trustees, because they are the ones who primarily are the ones who decide what changes are done to university campuses and buildings, and they have allowed for their proximity to the history of Confederacy to be more important to them than the safety and well-being and the psycho emotional understanding of students on that campus. And they are trash for that. And in real life, whoever they are, they should feel like they should be properly removed from their spaces, because you're not thinking about the student, you're thinking about yourself and your family's legacy, which is brutality, right. And you're proud of it, like, for dumb reasons. School, so like, y'all need to get checked on that.
This is literally what it looks
like, yeah.
Like, no, it's a real school.
It's like, yeah.
Any place that puts like where we should have like I have a whole freaking article about this. Where are the monuments are of the people who were freed themselves? Where are the monuments of the people who struggled?
Hello.
Where are those monuments? Where are those? Because those are the people that we should have pride for. The people who aided and abetted and accomplished and pushed for these changes. Those are the people that we should have monuments for. You don't have monuments for losers. You don't have monuments for human traffickers. We don't do that. So keep that out of here. Same goes for the same narrative and freaking like general like propaganda and understanding of the world that allows this stuff to happen, which is we channel through Dean McKinnon and Officer Norris. They know they're wilding. They know they're making these girls feel unsafe, and they do not care. And the fact that Dean McKinnon probably knows Norris's personality, and for Norris to say, "Oh, Bree, he told me that you were being disrespectful," you should like don't. Why are you even bringing that up? Like, like I just can't. Like, where I know I partially want to be like, where's the DEI training? But at the same time, I know DEI is often BS. So overall, I just these people can be fired and removed from their jobs and replaced with people who are better equipped to have discussions with people of color, whoever they might be, whatever background they may be, people who are better equipped, because these people are not it. And if you can't talk well with people of color, then you really shouldn't have that job, because you're interacting with people of color on a regular effing
I feel like
basis.
Porshèa said everything that I was going to say.
Yeah, I only
so, but
yeah, I just
we
want to
just have
add
the
one
same
thing, which is
benches.
like, so we see this a lot in like in anywhere in which people are made a part of these programs where they have like the structure of the program takes away a lot of their autonomy and control. It's like if you're going to have a program like early college, you're going to have kids behaving like college students, which means going off campus and doing these things. And I think, like we talked about with like having a peer mentor, like that shouldn't be a punishment. That should just be a part of the program. And like, yeah, there should be some strictures, but when you make it so that people feel beholden um to you to be in a place, or that like the rules are so strict that they can't actually experience or have the experience that they're trying to get, you're going to have kids have pushback. And then it's also like the double standard, right? Like Charlotte's like, oh no, we did this. She doesn't see the differences between her and Alice and Bree, or she's not recognizing those differences and like, or intellectualizing like that there will be different consequences for these two students. But also like, there are a lot of kind of rules and stuff in which I saw this video the other day where it's like people actively commit 2 to 3 felonies a day, and it's impossible to not commit a felony. It's a matter of like who's getting criminalized for these things, right? So if you've ever, I forget what they said, like there was some example that I was like, oh, I do that all the time. And like, oh, if you live in a place like California where weed is legal, and you smoke weed, and then you fill out a form like at the DMV that asks if you've ever committed a felony, and you hit no, then you've committed fraud, and that's a felony, right? Because weed is legal in your state, but it's not legal federally, whatever. And that's just like a matter of like just poor legislation and poor rules, like just badly written rules that do not reflect realities in any way. And I think that like part of the issues here, like, yes, they did break the rules. I'm not like, they knew the rules, Alice knew the rules, they decided to break them anyway, but there isn't any kind of leeway or understanding that like some of those rules are written with the knowledge that these children are going to break them, because that's a part of the process. And so the difference in reactions and like over kind of policing or over disciplining these students is just something that I think, like, another reason why I wanted to bench the dean and the sheriff. I just think that we should like acknowledge the fact that there are probably some other early college kids at that party as well, and they got to make it home. So
yeah, 100%.
Thank you for listening. Next week, we will discuss chapters 6 through 8 of Legendborn.
Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com. And then follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.